fishing boat reached the island just after 6 in the morning. From far away, the village looked peaceful and alive. Small wooden houses stood near the shore, and thin lines of smoke slowly rose from chimneys. The sea moved gently against the rocks, while birds circled above. The rescue team had arrived after sailors reported seeing empty fishing boats drifting alone nearby. At first, everyone believed the villagers had simply gone somewhere together. But the silence waiting on the island felt unnatural. As they stepped onto the sand, the first strange detail appeared. Fresh footprints covered the beach. Some led toward the homes, others toward the path going into the forest. Yet there were no voices, no movement, and no sign of people. One officer shouted a greeting, expecting someone to answer from inside the houses. Nothing responded except the sound of waves rolling onto the shore. They entered the first home near the docks. Inside, bowls of soup rested on a table, still giving off warmth. Bread had been sliced, but not eaten. A chair lay tipped backward, as if someone had stood up suddenly. A small oil lamp burned beside the wall. Whoever lived there had left very recently, maybe only minutes earlier. The team began to feel uneasy. Entire families do not disappear without taking food, clothes, or even shoes. The search continued from house to house. Every home looked the same. Cooking pots remained over low flames. Tea inside metal cups was still warm enough to touch. In one room, children's toys were scattered across the floor, one gently rocking as if recently moved. Daily life had stopped halfway through normal routines. It felt as though time itself had paused. Outside, fishing nets were neatly folded beside the water. Boats were safely tied to wooden posts. Tools rested exactly where workers would normally leave them after finishing work. Nothing showed panic or danger. There were no broken doors or signs of struggle. It looked as if the entire village had calmly stood up together and walked away at the same moment. Near the middle of the village stood a large gathering hall. Its doors remained open. Inside, long tables were filled with freshly prepared food. Cooked fish, fruits, and warm bread suggested a celebration had been taking place. Candles still burned slowly, melting wax across the tables. In one corner, an old radio quietly played music. Someone had clearly been there not long before the team arrived. Behind the hall, investigators discovered something important. Hundreds of footprints formed a single trail leading toward the forest. Adult steps mixed with smaller ones belonging to children. Every track moved in the same direction. None returned. The rescue team followed carefully as sunlight faded under thick trees. The deeper they walked, the quieter the forest became. No birds called. No animals moved. After nearly 30 minutes of walking, they reached an open clearing and suddenly stopped. Personal belongings covered the ground everywhere. Shoes, bags, tools, and family photographs lay scattered across the soil. It appeared that the villagers had removed many of their possessions before moving forward. But beyond the clearing, the earth was untouched. The footprints ended completely. Search operations lasted for several days. Boats circled the island waters, while helicopters scanned from above. Divers searched beneath the sea cliffs. Not a single body or survivor was found. There were no hidden tunnels, no caves large enough to hold hundreds of people. The disappearance made no sense. Later, investigators noticed another disturbing detail. Every clock inside the village had stopped at exactly 6:17 in the evening. Mechanical clocks, wall clocks, and even wristwatches all showed the same time. Weather records confirmed calm conditions that night. No storm, earthquake, or emergency signal had ever been reported. The island was eventually closed, and officials offered simple explanations that never fully satisfied anyone. Still, the untouched dinners, burning candles, and unfinished moments told another story, one frozen forever in time. Years later, fishermen sailing nearby claim they sometimes see faint lights glowing inside the empty homes just after sunset. Others report hearing distant music carried across the water during quiet nights. And on certain evenings, smoke is still seen rising from village chimneys, as if someone has just started cooking dinner again. But no one has ever returned from the island to explain what truly happened at 6:17 in the evening. The exact moment an entire village vanished together. Everyone in the town knew that. The glass windows were broken, the paint had peeled away, and birds nested where the great light once turned through the night. Children were warned not to go near it. Fishermen said the place was unlucky. But one cold evening in October, something happened that no one could explain. The lighthouse turned on again. It started just after sunset. Old Martin Hale was tying his boat at the harbor when a bright beam swept across the sea. At first, he thought it was a ship searching the coast. Then the light came again, slow, steady, and familiar. His hands froze on the rope. That light could only come from one place. He turned toward Gray Shore Cliff, and his heart dropped. The abandoned lighthouse was shining. Within minutes, people gathered along the shore. Phones came out. Voices whispered. Some thought the town council had restored it without telling anyone. Others believed someone had broken inside as a prank. But there was one problem everyone soon realized. There had been no electricity connected to the lighthouse for decades. The power lines were cut long ago after a storm destroyed them 40 years earlier. Sheriff Dana Reeves arrived and decided to check it herself. She took 2 deputies and drove up the narrow road toward the cliff. The closer they got, the brighter the light became, sweeping across the ocean exactly as it had in old photographs. The metal door at the base of the lighthouse stood slightly open, moving gently in the wind. Dana felt uneasy before even stepping inside, as if someone already knew they were coming. The air inside smelled of salt and rust. Dust covered the stairs, untouched for years. Yet something strange caught her eye immediately. Fresh footprints leading upward. Someone had recently climbed the spiral steps. The deputies exchanged nervous looks. Whoever turned the light on had to still be there. Dana began climbing, each step echoing loudly in the silence. Halfway up, the light suddenly stopped. The rotating beam outside vanished, and darkness filled the tower. The only sound left was the wind hitting the walls. One deputy reached for his flashlight, but before he could switch it on, the lighthouse light roared back to life again, brighter than before. The walls seemed to hum softly, almost like a machine waking after a long sleep. When they reached the top room, they found something impossible. The massive lamp was spinning perfectly, clean and polished as if maintained daily, but no wires connected it to power, no generator, no batteries, nothing. And the footprints ended in the center of the room, with no sign of anyone leaving. Dana noticed an old logbook resting on a table. The last recorded entry was dated 40 years earlier, the night the lighthouse officially shut down after keeper Elias Warren disappeared during a violent storm. The town had searched for weeks but never found him. Many believed he fell into the sea. As Dana opened the logbook, a loose page slipped out. The handwriting looked rushed. If the light ever goes out, ships will crash. The deputies suddenly heard a sound behind them. Slow footsteps, moving down the stairs below. Dana rushed to the doorway and shined her light downward, but the staircase was empty. Still, the sound continued, steady and calm, like someone performing a routine they had done 1,000 times. Outside, fishermen later reported something else that night. A large cargo ship changed course at the last moment, avoiding hidden rocks near the coast. Rocks responsible for many old shipwrecks before the lighthouse existed. Without the light, the ship would have hit them directly. The next morning, the lighthouse was dark again. Engineers inspected the building, but found no working systems. The lamp should not have been able to turn on at all. Yet several ships reported seeing the beam clearly through the night. The mystery spread quickly beyond the town, drawing visitors and reporters, all asking the same question: who turned the lighthouse back on? Since that night, strange things continue to happen. Every few months, during heavy fog or dangerous storms, the lighthouse shines again for a few hours, always when ships are closest to danger. No one has ever been seen entering or leaving the tower. Some locals now believe Keeper Elias Warren never truly abandoned his post. They say he is still there, walking the spiral stairs, making sure the light never fails when it matters most. And on quiet nights, if you stand near Gray Shore Cliff, you might notice something even stranger. Just before the light appears, a shadow sometimes moves past the top window, as if someone inside is preparing to turn it on again. The small town of Seaview had always been quiet. Its sandy beaches were empty in the mornings, and the cabins along the cliffs were mostly closed for the winter. One foggy afternoon, a fisherman named Leo spotted something strange while heading back to the harbor. A family, a man, a woman, and 2 children, were walking along the beach. They were waving, smiling, and looked healthy, but there was something about them that made Leo uneasy. He called the sheriff, and soon Sheriff Nora Fields arrived with her deputies. When they reached the family, the man said, "We've been out for a walk, enjoying the sea." But the deputies noticed something odd. The family didn't seem to know the date. They thought it was summer, but the calendar clearly said November. Their clothes were old-fashioned, almost like something from decades ago. Nora decided to take them back to their cabin, which was just a short walk from the beach. When they arrived, everything looked normal from the outside. The paint was worn, and the roof had a few broken shingles, but it didn't look like anyone had been missing from it. She knocked on the door, and the same family stepped inside. Their cabin smelled of wood smoke and fresh bread, even though no one had seen smoke coming from the chimney. The strangest thing happened next. A neighbor, Mrs. Caldwell, arrived to greet the family. She lived next door for more than 30 years. When she saw them, her face turned pale. "That's impossible," she whispered. "You've been gone for 40 years. Nora frowned. "Gone? Where?" Mrs. Caldwell explained that the cabin had been abandoned for decades. No one had lived there since a fire nearly destroyed it 40 years ago. The town records confirmed it. The family on the beach should not exist. They had never left their cabin, yet here they were, walking along the shore as if nothing had happened. The deputies searched the cabin carefully. Everything inside was frozen in time. Dishes were stacked neatly on the table. Toys were in the corners of the room, and even a newspaper from 40 years ago lay on the floor. But the family seemed unaware of the dust and decay. They laughed and spoke as if the years had never passed. Nora stepped outside and looked at the ocean. The waves were calm, but a cold wind carried a strange smell, a mix of salt and smoke. She had a feeling she was witnessing something beyond explanation. No one could figure out how the family had survived, how they had aged so little, or why they had appeared on the beach just that afternoon. Over the next few days, reporters and scientists came to investigate. Cameras captured the family walking the beach, but when they tried to follow them into the cabin, the doors would be locked. Inside, the furniture and objects remained exactly as they had been 40 years ago. No fingerprints, no footprints, nothing to explain their presence. The family didn't answer questions about their past. They only smiled and said they were happy to be back on the beach. Locals began to whisper that the family was not entirely human, that perhaps the cabin had trapped them in some strange way, keeping them frozen in time until the right moment. Then one morning, the family disappeared. Their footprints vanished from the sand, and the cabin looked empty again. The town records showed the cabin as abandoned, just as before. Some say you can still see their shadows on the beach at sunset, walking hand in hand, never leaving the edge of the sea. The town of Seaview never forgot that day. Everyone who saw the family on the beach knew they had witnessed something impossible. And to this day, some people avoid the cliffs and the old cabin, afraid that if the fog rolls in, they might see the family again, walking slowly, smiling, but never leaving.
If this story sent chills down your spine, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more stories of real-life darkness. Your support helps us keep telling the stories many prefer to keep silent.